as a sportsman, do you need to show respect to receive it? I mean, let's put a bit more meat in the bones of this. Our friend Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player, has been at it again, Simon. He's claimed he doesn't receive the respect he deserves after Ashley Barty was awarded the John Newcombe Medal.
Yeah.
And that's Australian tennis's highest individual accolade. Do you remember John Newcombe? So do I.
Indeed.
Played doubles with Tony Roach.
He did.
So Ashley Barty was awarded it for the 5th time this week, but out in the cold is one Nick Kyrgios. And what does he say? He goes on Instagram sharing an image of a graphic detailing his and Barty's titles, Grand Slam events record and match wins in 2022. And the graphic was accompanied by the caption, "Lol, no respect at all. Anyway, I don't give a and I won't say it." Adam Peacock is an Australian sports journalist and broadcaster who's joined us on this show before. Adam, hi to you. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of what Kyrgios is up to now?
Oh, I'm not surprised. Morning, gents over there. Just want to thank you, by the way, for keeping myself and my son very occupied when we came over there for a 14-day football trip and drove around England. And basically, my son, who's 17, was sitting next to me and learning big words off Simon. So it was great.
Thanks, mate.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I learned some words too. But no, Kyrgios. You learn some words when Nick Kyrgios plays tennis, and yeah, you learn to know that he says he doesn't care, but he very much cares. And why would he post something like this if he didn't care? He absolutely cares, and he feels ripped off. But you look at it in the cold light of day. Ash Barty won a Grand Slam and then retired. There's no point in putting the record up head to head because Nick had a very good year, but Ash was done, and she came up with the greatest moment in Australian tennis last year. It's unfortunate for Nick because he came up with the second best by making the final of Wimbledon. So, yeah, it's not been well received down here today.
I'm interested in it, Adam. How is he received now in Australia by his fellow countrymen at this time? What do you think of him?
I like him because I'm entertained by him, which for me is what a sportsman, unless you're materially invested in terms of being a fan of a team, and then you've got a bit more riding on it. But I don't have anything riding on Nick Kyrgios winning a tennis match, but I'm absolutely entertained by him. But the relationship with Nick Kyrgios in Australia can be described as such: love, hate, love, hate, love, hate times 1,100 million, basically. And it's in that cycle. It goes around and around and around. So I don't know where we're at the moment. Maybe we're spinning back towards hate away from love because he had a great year. He absolutely had a great year.
But nonetheless, does he get the respect he merits in your part of the world? It would sound he feels no.
He's known for more than just what he does with a racket in his hand. So that, for me, by proxy, brings other things into the argument in terms of how he's respected and how he behaves and what he says away from the court. All comes into the narrative of trying to form what you actually think of Nick Kyrgios. As a tennis player, I think absolutely everyone respects him, but does that respect extend to what his whole package is? I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, Dean, where do you stand on it? Do you need to show respect to receive it?
Not necessarily, but he's basically cast himself as a pantomime villain throughout his career, and he is a super talented player, Adam, isn't he? And therefore, he's got to the Grand Slam finals because of that talent. But ultimately, because he's cast himself as that, people aren't willing to turn up and cheer the pantomime villain because they're waiting for a reaction. They don't agree with some of the things that he does or says. And I think he's forgotten that he's actually in an entertainment industry and that everything he does on and off the court will determine how people think of you. Whether you like that or not, whether you're good at tennis or not, ultimately people will make assumptions of you with what they see from you. And sometimes, no matter what you do, what you say, they just don't like you.
That's pretty fair point, isn't it?
Yeah, to a point. I do think that Nick, as he's grown up, he's realised, and this is important for all sports people and entertainers, he's realised his own value. So he knows, with no Ash Barty, Tennis Australia really need him to rock up to the Australian Open and play pretty well for the event to really kick off here in Australia. He knows that when he rocks up to Wimbledon next year, he's going to be really, really heavily scrutinised and looked at. Now, whether or not he'll be able to handle that in terms of his own expectation and what he'll be able to come up with, given that at the time he might be, have a niggle or an injury or not feeling emotionally well, is another thing. But I think he really appreciates his own value, and he's got his head around that.
You know something, Simon? I'm inclined to be in the camp of Nick, get on with it. I mean, apparently he told the Australian media last week it was an easy decision to skip Australia's recent Davis Cup campaign, but he might come back if the country embraces him a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, look, he is a remarkable mercurial talent that doesn't actually win very much. And so with that in mind, we talk about the slams. He's been to a quarter-final in 2 slams and a final in 1. He's 27 years of age. He hasn't won a slam. There are great Australian tennis players that have gone in the past, Pat Cash, Pat Rafter, Leighton Hewitt, that have actually gone on and won things. It's an Australian trait to be very competitive and actually to compete at the highest level, whether you even go back to Ivan Goolagong, the players that played in Australian tennis that won things. So whilst he's got this remarkable talent, I think you disrespect him because he disrespects himself with the waste of his talent at times. And then you add in the puerility of some of his behaviour. McEnroe was an awful behaviour on the court, but he won. So people began to get this begrudging respect because his achievements superseded his outbursts.
Yeah.
Ilie Nastase, the same. This guy doesn't really win. And then you look at some of the behaviour on the during Wimbledon this year, and some of the observations, calling people in the crowd drunk and making observations about people's behaviour. Some of it I think is fair play, and some of it I think chapeau, well done you for calling it out for what it is. And other times I think you are a silly little brat that has nothing to say. You don't act like an adult, you act like a child. But I do think from a talent point of view, he's a remarkable talent, which makes his inability to have done anything particularly formidable on a tennis court actually quite disappointing. I don't know what you think, Adam.
I can see that point of view, definitely. Much of the behaviour on the court, for me, is a reaction to stress. That's how he relates. That's how he gets his head around the fact that I'm meant to be winning this match, because he knows, and everyone on the tour knows, he's the most dangerous guy in the draw, especially early in the tournament, because he's got more talent than, I would say, I'd put his basic talent level above Novak Djokovic.
I agree.
Not saying he's a better player than Novak Djokovic, because Novak has got absolutely everything out of his God-given talent and then plenty more. But yeah, I just feel that sometimes on court, it is him, but it's his way of dealing with a moment that he can't calculate in his head.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.